I had been counting down the days for this concert for what felt like forever. It wasn't just any concert, it was the concert, the one where I'd finally get to see my favorite band live up close in the front row. The tickets were nearly impossible to get, but after weeks of refreshing the page, hoping and praying for some luck, I finally scored them. Front row, VIP access, a once in a lifetime experience. I'd imagined it so many times, the lights dimming, the crowd roaring, and then the band walking out on stage playing all of my favorite songs. I could almost feel the bass vibrating in my chest, the rush of adrenaline as they started the first notes. It was going to be everything I ever dreamed of, and I had earned it. I had even planned what to wear. A vintage band tee, ripped jeans, and my favorite boots. I wanted to look effortlessly cool, like I belonged there. I made plans with my friends to meet up before the show, and I'd been talking about it nonstop. My entire social media feed was basically one countdown after another. Everyone knew about it. This concert was going to be a major part of my life. And then it all fell apart. The day before the concert, I was sitting at my desk, feeling the excitement build as I mentally prepared for the night ahead. My boss, Greg, let's call him that for now, walked into the office like he always does, trying to project this air of superiority. He's the type of guy who thinks just because he has the title, he's entitled to everything. I was used to his little power plays, but today felt different. He had that look in his eyes like he was about to drop some nonsense on me, and of course, he did. Mia, I need you to take a look at something. His voice was cold, like he wasn't about to ask for a favor, but demand it. I shifted in my chair, knowing exactly what was coming. He'd done it before, told me to drop my plans, to sacrifice my time for something he needed, and I always had to cave because of his position. But this was different. This was my concert. I wasn't just going to let him take that away. I've got these VIP tickets to a concert tomorrow night, he continued, his voice oozing that I'm a big deal tone. I need you to reschedule your evening. The client needs extra attention, and I'm going to need you to stay late to help me prep for the meeting on Monday. Before I could even speak, he reached across my desk, grabbed the concert tickets, and held them up with a smirk. I'll take these off your hands, he said. Since you'll be too busy with the project, you can watch it on TV. He tossed the tickets down on my desk like it was a simple transaction, completely unaware of the blood boiling in my veins. It hit me like a ton of bricks. These weren't just any tickets, these were my tickets, my one shot at seeing this band in person, and there he was, casually taking them from me as if he could decide my fate on a whim. I tried to hold back the frustration that threatened to spill over. The worst part, I had no choice. He was my boss. The power dynamics were clear. I couldn't afford to outright refuse him. I smiled through clenched teeth, trying to mask my anger. Sure, Greg, I'll watch it on TV. But inside, I was furious. I was beyond furious. How could he do this? Did he really think I could just watch a live concert on TV and feel okay about it? He had no idea what he was taking from me, no idea how important this was, but I was not going to let him get away with this. As soon as he walked away, I sat there, staring at the empty tickets on my desk. My mind was racing. I needed a plan. There was no way I was going to let him have the last laugh here. No. I was going to make sure he regretted this decision. I took a deep breath and started thinking. If I couldn't be at the concert, I was going to make sure Greg's night turned into a complete disaster. I wasn't going to let him think he could just take something that meant so much to me without facing some consequences. It was time to get creative. That's when the idea hit me. I'd gotten to know Greg well enough over the past couple of years to know that he loved to appear as though he was above everyone else. He had to be the center of attention, always bragging about his connections, his wealth, his exclusive experiences. He loved pretending that he had the perfect life and everyone else was just lucky to be in his orbit. I knew this about him, and I was going to use it against him. I didn't just want to get back at him for taking my tickets. I wanted to make sure everyone knew he wasn't the VIP he thought he was. I was going to make his night just as miserable as he was making mine. The first step? Spoiling the whole illusion of his night. If he was going to brag about being at the concert, I was going to make sure he looked like an amateur. I was going to plant misinformation, make him seem like he didn't even belong in the front row. I wanted the world to know he was just a poser. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. I started by setting up a fake fan page for the band. It seemed harmless at first, just a couple of posts about the concert, some insider information, but then I went further. I created fake set lists, posted wild rumors about the band, and pretended to be an insider with all the scoop. I knew Greg would take the bait. He would see it, think it was real, and share it with his VIP connections. I grinned. This was going to be fun. I had to play it smart, though. I couldn't make it too obvious. I needed to create just enough chaos that Greg would start questioning everything about his perfect night. And once I got that part down, I could move to step 2. The night of the concert arrived, and Greg was already bragging about how amazing his night was going to be. I could practically hear his voice in my head, filled with that smug confidence of someone who thought they had it all figured out. Little did he know I was already ahead of him. While he was busy preparing for the show, thinking he was some kind of rock star, I was busy putting the finishing touches on my plan. I had spent the entire day making sure everything was set up perfectly. My fake fan page was blowing up with rumors, spoilers, and exaggerated details about the concert. I had carefully crafted each post to appear as authentic as possible, nothing too obvious, just enough to make Greg think he was in the loop. I even dropped a few subtle hints that the band might not be performing the songs he expected. It didn't take long for him to take the bait. Just as I predicted, Greg was the first one to share the posts I had created. He plastered them across his social media, acting like he was in the know, the ultimate VIP. I could almost hear his voice through his posts as he eagerly tried to flex in front of his followers. "Hey, looks like they're playing a surprise track tonight. Can't wait to hear this one. Thanks for the scoop." The more Greg shared, the more I cringed at how easy it was to manipulate him. His need to show off was his downfall, and it made my job ridiculously simple. But I wasn't done yet. I had another trick up my sleeve, one that would make him squirm when the night came to an end. I reached out to my friend in media, a photographer who had access to behind-the-scenes footage at concerts. He was more than happy to help, especially once I told him my plan. I needed unflattering photos of Greg at the concert, the kind of photos that would make him look like a complete poser. I couldn't just have him looking like a clueless fan in the crowd. No, I needed something that would really humiliate him. I suggested he catch Greg at his most awkward, maybe when he was trying to look cool but didn't quite know how to vibe with the music. Maybe he'd be caught squinting at the stage, trying to figure out what song was playing while everyone else was totally immersed in the experience. Or better yet, I hoped he'd snap a picture just as Greg was turning his head mid-smirk while missing the best part of the show. It didn't take long for my friend to deliver. Within hours, I had a collection of photos of Greg looking completely out of place, staring blankly at the stage and awkwardly posing in a way that screamed, "I don't belong here." Every image seemed to capture him at his worst moment. It was too perfect, the kind of photos that would make anyone who looked at them think, "Wow, this guy's a joke." But I wasn't just going to leave it there. The real genius of my plan was that I knew Greg wasn't just some average guy. He had an ego the size of the venue itself. He couldn't resist the urge to post every moment of his life for everyone to see. That's where the real magic would happen. I waited for him to post his own pictures, and sure enough, by the time he was halfway through his night, Greg had already shared a picture of himself in the VIP section, trying to look casual but clearly desperate to show everyone he was at the best spot in the house. What he didn't know was that while he was doing that, I was getting ready to strike. I edited the photos of Greg, making sure to capture him in all his most awkward, uncomfortable poses. Then I leaked them onto his own social media, tagging him in every post. It was perfect timing. His followers started commenting almost immediately, pointing out how out of place he looked, how he couldn't seem to get into the vibe of the concert, and how his insider info was actually totally wrong. I didn't stop there, though. I posted screenshots of his own embarrassing posts, making sure to highlight just how much of a poser he was. I even created a fake poll asking people what they thought of the VIP experience. The options were simple: cool and laid back, or cringeworthy. Guess which one took off? By the time Greg checked his phone, he was already deep in the middle of the concert, blissfully unaware of what was unfolding online. He thought he was having the time of his life, posting about how great everything was. But back at the office, the meme-worthy photos of his awkward moments were spreading like wildfire. People were sending them to each other, commenting, laughing. It wasn't just my coworkers. Even some of Greg's high-profile clients were chiming in, making jokes about his ridiculous attempt to look like a rock star. I couldn't help but laugh to myself. The look on Greg's face when he got back to the office was going to be priceless. He had no idea that while he was out living his so-called dream, I was turning him into the laughingstock of his own social circle. But my plan wasn't over yet. The next step was to make sure he felt the sting of his mistake when he returned to the office the following morning. By then, the damage would be done. His social media would be flooded with comments pointing out how out of place he looked at the concert, how everyone could tell he didn't really know what he was talking about, and how his so-called VIP experience was anything but that. Greg was about to get a taste of his own medicine, and it was going to be sweet. At this point, I felt like I was playing chess while Greg was stuck in a game of checkers. He thought he could just take what was mine and walk away without any consequences, but little did he know, I had already thought of every move. And when the night was over, he would be the one left with nothing but the empty feeling of regret. I could hardly wait for the morning. The morning after the concert, I woke up with a sense of satisfaction that I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just about the success of my plan, it was about the sweet irony of what was about to unfold. Greg was probably waking up thinking he had just experienced the most incredible night of his life, ready to brag to anyone who would listen about his VIP access and how he was rubbing elbows with the elite at the concert. What he didn't know was that the moment he logged into his phone, his world was going to turn upside down. I could already imagine him pulling up his Instagram, looking through his posts, and seeing a flood of comments and reactions he hadn't anticipated. I had made sure every last detail was in place, from the strategically placed memes to the subtle jabs that would make him question everything. The best part, Greg would have no idea how it all started. He would never know that the chaos in his social media feed came from me. It wasn't long before I received the first text. "Mia, what the hell happened last night?" It was from one of our colleagues, Mark, who had been following along with the disaster. I couldn't help but smile to myself as I read the message. I'd already anticipated that people would start talking, but seeing it in real time made it even sweeter. I waited a moment before responding, letting the tension build. I wanted to make Greg sweat a little more. "What do you mean?" I replied casually, playing innocent. "I didn't hear anything about last night." The response came almost immediately. "You seriously didn't see his Instagram? He looks like a total idiot, man. Everyone's roasting him. I don't know who did it, but it's genius." I could feel the excitement bubbling inside me as I sat back in my chair. The fact that Mark was so entertained by it all just made everything that much more satisfying. But I couldn't let my excitement get the best of me. I had to keep my cool. I spent the rest of the morning watching as Greg's reputation crumbled in real time. People who had followed his posts started calling him out. One person posted, "VIP tickets, but looks like he's still stuck in the nosebleeds." Another commented, "I thought Greg was supposed to be a big deal, but he looks like he doesn't even know what song they're playing." The memes started coming in from all directions. Greg's attempt at being cool was quickly turning into a memeable moment. It didn't take long for the comments to go viral, with people jumping in from all over the place, some of them even tagging him in their posts, mocking his every move. One of the best posts came from an anonymous account that had edited one of Greg's concert selfies. They put a ridiculous caption: "When you pay for VIP tickets but still get treated like a middle schooler at the concert, #poser." I couldn't stop laughing. Greg had no idea what was happening. Around lunchtime, I saw Greg storm into the office. He looked visibly upset, which made me almost giddy. He was doing his best to maintain composure, but anyone could see that he was rattled. His usually confident posture had deflated, and his expression was tight with frustration. He made a beeline for his office without saying a word to anyone. It was only a matter of time before he realized that he had completely miscalculated. He sat down at his desk, grabbed his phone, and I could practically feel the tension in the air as he started scrolling. His fingers paused for a moment. I could only imagine what was going through his mind as he saw the flood of notifications. At first, maybe it was just one comment or two, but I knew by the time he hit the fourth or fifth one, the realization would settle in. It wasn't long before the door to his office slammed shut. A few minutes later, Greg was storming down the hallway, heading straight toward me. His face was flushed, and I could feel the anger radiating off of him. This was the moment I had been waiting for. He stood in front of my desk, fuming. "Mia, what the hell is going on?" he demanded, his voice sharp and accusatory. I raised an eyebrow, trying my best to keep a neutral expression. "What do you mean, I asked, leaning back in my chair, feigning confusion. "Don't play dumb with me," he snapped, his face turning redder by the second. "Someone's been posting these photos of me, embarrassing photos, and I want to know who it is." I leaned forward slightly, offering him a fake look of concern. "I don't know what you're talking about, Greg. Maybe people are just misinterpreting your night?" His eyes narrowed. "Don't lie. I know you're behind this." His voice dropped lower, filled with a mix of frustration and realization. "You took my tickets, Mia. I should have known you'd do something like this." I couldn't help but feel a rush of satisfaction. He had finally connected the dots, but I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. I held my ground. "Greg," I said, pretending to be calm, "it's not like you're the only one who's been to a concert. I mean, you posted so much about it last night. Maybe you're just being a little too sensitive about all the attention." He glared at me, seething with barely contained rage. "You ruined my night," he hissed. "I've worked too hard to build my image, and you've destroyed it for what? Some petty revenge?" I took a deep breath, trying to act like his outburst was just another Tuesday. "Look, Greg, I don't know what to tell you. You took my tickets. I just made sure the world got to see how real your experience was. If you don't want to be roasted online, maybe stop acting like you're something you're not." His face twisted in anger, but before he could say anything more, I saw a few of our colleagues gathering around, trying to catch the drama unfolding. Their curious eyes darted back and forth between us. It was clear they were enjoying the show, and honestly, I was too. Greg clenched his fists, his face a mixture of humiliation and rage. "You'll pay for this," he muttered under his breath before storming back to his office. I watched him go, but I wasn't done. This wasn't just about Greg, this was about teaching him a lesson. He'd crossed a line when he thought he could just take what belonged to me without any consequences. He'd learned that nobody, no matter how high up they were, could get away with treating others like they were disposable. As I sat back in my chair, I felt a sense of pride. Greg's image was in shambles, and I had made sure of it. But more importantly, I had shown him that actions have consequences. It was a moment of vindication, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had the upper hand. The next few days felt like a whirlwind, and I watched with a strange sense of satisfaction as Greg's world continued to spiral. The fallout from the concert fiasco had only intensified, and I could tell that the cracks in his carefully crafted image were starting to show. His social media was flooded with sarcastic comments, memes, and mocking tags from people he probably thought were his friends. It wasn't just his followers who were getting in on the joke anymore, it was his clients, his colleagues, and even some of the higher-ups in the company. Greg had never been the type of person to take a step back and think about the consequences of his actions, but now there he was, completely exposed. At work, things weren't much better. Greg had gone from being the office king to a man under constant scrutiny. Every little thing he did seemed to be under a microscope. The way he walked, the way he spoke, even the way he laughed, it was all a subject of mockery. He'd lost his usual swagger and replaced it with a defensive, almost paranoid energy. It was as if every step he took was guided by the fear that someone was about to make fun of him again. One morning, I passed by his desk on my way to the break room. He was hunched over his computer, typing frantically, trying to salvage whatever shred of dignity he had left. When he noticed me walking by, he straightened up and put on his best business-as-usual face, but there was no hiding the tension in his eyes. He knew exactly what I was thinking, and for a brief moment, our eyes locked. I could see it in his gaze, the anger, the humiliation, the frustration. It was all there, bubbling just under the surface. He wanted to lash out, to scream at me, to demand that I fix things, but he couldn't. He couldn't afford to. He had no leverage, no power in this situation. I had made sure of that. Later that day, we were in a meeting together, and it was clear that Greg was struggling. His usual confident, articulate self was nowhere to be found. He stumbled over his words, his hands shaking slightly as he tried to make his points. I watched as the people around the table exchanged glances, their eyes darting between him and me. It was almost as if they were waiting for him to crack, and honestly, I was waiting too. When the meeting ended, Greg didn't say anything to anyone. He just packed up his things and rushed out of the room. He didn't even make eye contact with me. It was a quiet victory, one that felt sweeter with each passing day. It was one thing to expose Greg for what he was, but seeing him unravel like this, watching him struggle to maintain the facade he'd spent years building, was the real payoff. The real turning point came when Greg finally confronted me again, but this time it was different. He wasn't angry, he wasn't defiant, he was broken. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, just as I was getting ready to leave for the day. I was packing up my things when Greg appeared at my desk, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes dark with exhaustion. "Mia, we need to talk," he said quietly, his voice lacking the usual edge. I hesitated for a moment, looking up at him. I'd been expecting this conversation, but I wasn't sure how it would unfold. I wasn't going to make it easy for him. "Talk about what?" I asked, my tone as neutral as I could manage. Greg took a deep breath, his eyes darting nervously around the office as if he was looking for an escape. I just want to understand why you did this," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I don't get it. I thought we were friends. I thought I could trust you." I could hear the desperation in his words, but I wasn't going to give him any sympathy. Not yet. I stayed silent, letting the tension build, watching as he struggled to hold himself together.
Finally, he spoke again, his words coming out in a rush. I get it. I screwed up. I shouldn't have taken your tickets. I shouldn't have acted the way I did, but this wasn't fair, Mia. You didn't have to do this to me. There it was, the apology I had been waiting for, or rather, the one I knew was coming. But it wasn't enough. It was too late. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. You really don't get it, do you, Greg? I said, my voice calm but firm. You think this is about the tickets, about the concert. It's not. This is about you. This is about the way you treat people like they're disposable. You thought you could just walk in, take what's mine, and leave without any consequences. You thought you were untouchable. His face fell, and I could see the weight of my words sinking in. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just staring at me, lost in thought. Finally, he sighed and sat down in the chair across from my desk. I get it now, he said quietly. I've been so caught up in my own crap that I didn't even notice how I was treating people. I've been a jerk, and I guess this is what I deserve? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let him sit with his thoughts, watching him struggle to come to terms with everything that had happened. The silence stretched on, but I could tell that something inside of him was shifting. You've got to learn from this, Greg, I said after a while, my voice softening slightly. It's not about being right or wrong anymore. It's about who you want to be moving forward. Do you want to keep pretending to be someone you're not, or are you going to start owning up to your mistakes? He nodded slowly, his eyes now downcast. I don't know if I can fix this, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but I'm going to try. I have to. I smiled a little, the sense of satisfaction lingering, but there was a hint of something else too, a sense of relief. Greg had been so consumed by his need for validation and approval that he had completely lost sight of who he was. But now, he was at least beginning to see the damage he had caused, and maybe, just maybe, he would make an effort to be better. I hope you do, I said, my voice quieter now, because if you don't, you'll end up right back where you started, and trust me, you don't want to be there. With that, Greg stood up and left, his shoulders a little straighter than before. I couldn't say if he would change or if he would slip back into his old habits, but for the first time in a long time, he seemed to be looking inward instead of blaming others. As I watched him walk away, I knew I had made my point. Greg's fall from grace wasn't just about humiliation, it was about growth. Sometimes, the best way to learn is to be knocked down a peg, to face the consequences of your actions, and to realize that no one is invincible. It was a lesson I'd learned long ago, and it was one that, hopefully, Greg would remember for a long time to come.